Good morning, children. Today we are going to continue heredity and variation. Genetics is a science which often deals with heredity and variation. What is called heredity? Transmission of or inheritance of characters from parents to offspring is called heredity. What is variation? The organisms which belong to the same natural population or species that shows differences in their character or characteristic feature is called variation. So individual which belong to the same species shows dissimilarity or differences between them is called variation. Variation is of two types: continuous variation and discontinuous variation. Let us continue the types of variation. First, let us see the discontinuous variation. Within a population, there are some characteristics which shows a limit or limited form of variation. Within the population, some characteristic which shows limited form of variation. Not all the characters in living organism. Example, in some plants we observe the discontinuous variation. Style length in primula and plant height in garden pea plant. Garden pea plant, you can see the two forms in stem height, namely tall and dwarf, that you already know. In discontinuous variation, the characteristic features or the characters are controlled by one or two major genes which may have two or more allelic forms. So one gene may control one character or two major genes which control the character. Genes may have more than two allelic forms. These variations are genetically determined by inheritance of factors. These variations are genetically determined by inheritance factor called genes now. Individuals produced by this variation shows differences without any intermediate form between them. So two organisms which are belongs to the same species shows differences. Say for example, tall and dwarf in stem height in Pisum sativa plant does not show any intermediate, namely medium size. There is no overlapping of two phenotypes. Phenotypes means morphological character. Height of the Pisum sativa in which tall and dwarf never overlap one another and does not produce any intermediate form called medium size. The phenotypic expression is unaffected by environmental factors. So temperature, humidity or nutrient does not affect the phenotypic expression. Hence, discontinuous variation is also called as qualitative inheritance. Let us come to the continuous variation. Continuous variation, it may be due to the genetic as well as the environmental factors. So both the environmental factors and the genetic factors that determines the variation in living organism is called a continuous variation. In a population, most of the characteristics exhibit a complete gradation from one extreme to the another without any break. Inheritance of phenotype is determined by combined effects of many genes. So inheritance of phenotype is determined by the combined effects of many genes, we called polygenes, and environmental factors. Polygenes in the sense more than one gene. This also known as quantitative inheritance. Hence, continuous variation is also called as quantitative inheritance. Height in human and skin color in human are the very good example for quantitative inheritance. Next, we are going to continue importance of variation. Imagine if there is no differences between the living organism, all will be resembling similarities. So nature will not allow. Variations is very important. Let us see the importance of variation. Variation make some individuals better fitted in the struggle for existence. Variation makes some individuals better to fit in the environment for the struggle for existence. They help the individuals to adapt themselves to the changing environment. Environment get changed. According to the changing environment, some new characters has to be adapted. Variation will bring this one. Variation which provide the genetic material for the natural selection. Variation provides the genetic material for natural selection. Variations allows plant breeders to improve better yield, quicker growth, increased resistance, and lesser input. Plants with many characters due to variation which shows increased yield, especially plant breeding technology. Desirable characters brought by variation in plants is very important. Variation, the most important point. Variation constitute the raw materials for evolution. Variation which constitute the raw material for the evolution. So new characters will be arise, that organism grow independently, breed among themselves, and produce new species. That's what variation is very important. Okay children, in the next video we are continuing with the new part, Mendelism. Thank you children.